Relations between the governments of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo have soured further after Rwanda's national air carrier announced the suspension of flights to Kinshasa, Lubumbashi as well as Goma with immediate effect. And this comes after the DRC banned Rwandan traffic from its airspace. The DRC is accusing Kigali of supporting M23 rebels and has summoned Rwanda's ambassador to Kinshasa to address the issue.
Following an extraordinary meeting of the Superior Defense Council chaired by Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi, Communications Minister Patrick Muyaya announced the suspension of Rwandan flights in DRC airspace. The Congolese government accuses Kigali of backing M23 rebels in the eastern DRC. Evidence offered by the DRC is alleged testimony from locals, images captured by soldiers, and rebels being found in possession of Rwandan military equipment. Kinshasa accuses Kigali of thwarting peace processes being mediated by Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta. The M23 is one of more than 120 armed groups plaguing the DRC, born of past regional conflicts. According to the United Nations, 72,000 people have been displaced due to clashes with the M23.
For some analysis, we're now joined by Channel Africa producer Nixon Katembo. Thanks so much indeed, Nixon. Good to have you in the studio. We've been chatting quite a while. It's good to see you.
Certainly, I'm delighted to be here, Peter, almost after 3 years since the pandemic started.
And sadly, we talk about the same issues because they seem to reoccur. You've always mentioned the neighboring states, Uganda and Rwanda, and their involvement, participation in the troubles inside the DRC. Is what's happened now concrete proof that there is involvement by countries like Rwanda?
I think the DRC taking such a drastic step to call someone, Rwandan ambassador Vesa Karega, to explain Rwanda's involvement is a clear sign of what I've been saying. Remember the last time I was on this show, a few days ago, Rwanda had said that the DRC has sent mortar shell on its territory and they injured some villages, which then was a recipe, and I said that don't get surprised that in the next few days you will see Rwanda getting involved inside the DRC. Indeed, to those words, they got involved, and this is after the said attack of the M23 on Rumangabo and places like Buhumba territory in Nyiragongo area, just close to Kigoma, to the city of Goma. This is where the Italian ambassador was killed a couple of years ago. So that tells you how much. And interestingly enough, for the DRC government, which is I don't know whether I should say positive or fortunate and unfortunate for Rwandan government, there is evidence that have emerged of Rwandan soldiers being captured by the Congolese National Army, as well as military equipment, including mortar artilleries, as well as RPGs and other ammunition and Rwandan uniforms found during the battle between the two armies under the guise that the Congolese army was fighting the M23.
I mean, this sounds like pretty compelling evidence when we start looking at uniforms, military hardware that's used by Rwandan forces. How has Rwanda explained this?
Rwanda, interestingly enough, they are trying to circumvent the evidence that has been presented, saying that those soldiers that were captured by the Congolese National Army were abducted by a group of militias operating alongside the Congolese National Army, which is not true according to sources that we've get so far, because the evidence was presented by the regional peace and security mechanism that seeks to see the involvement of the armed group, including who is dealing with what and what. This is in relation to the Addis Ababa Accord, where the ICGLR was born. So the evidence is there. It has been presented to the ICGLR, and President Tshisekedi, interestingly enough, he is the current chair of the Peace and Security Mechanism. And to come out like that and point Rwanda with no uncertain terms, it shows the clear evidence of how Rwanda's involvement. Just to give a topography of how that region is. On top, right across, you have Mountain Sabinyo. Down you have the mountain Bisoke, and down you have Mountain Karisimbi. Then far inside the Virunga National Park you have the Mikeno volcano. So along the border between those two countries, the DRC and Rwanda, on the other hand, on the other side you have Virunga National Park, and on the other side you have Volcano National Park in Rwanda. So it's easier for the so-called M23. In this case, it has become clear that it's the Rwandan National Defense Forces, in this case, crossing into the national park. And according to the information I have, they crossed in a place where the Congolese rangers have established a hotel. It's called Murigi Keri, along the border between Rwanda and the DRC. And they overran that post of the rangers, crossing to side the DRC in the territory called Buhumba, and go along to cut Goma from the rest of the Ruchuru territory. In other words, going towards the Rumangabo military base, where the UN forces were attacked. Remember the communique issued by the United Nations that the M23 have attacked the UN mission there. So that is the topography of that particular region. But militarily, on the other side of Rwanda, you have the Bigogwe military base, which is on the side of Rwanda, and this is about 37 kilometers from DRC's Goma, which is the provincial capital of North Kivu. And far in the north of Goma, you have Rumangabo military base, which is the Congolese army. So you have two armies facing each other in a way that these attacks happen as the M23. Meanwhile, with the evidence coming out as Rwandan National Defense Forces, Rwanda Defense Forces. On the other hand, you have the Congolese. So my view of the region, understanding how a cross-border operation happen, I am of the view that perhaps the Rwandan Defense Forces was trying to assist the M23, who have been battling the army in Chanzu, which is far about south, far north of Goma, about 60 kilometers away from Goma, near the border of Nagana. So they have been losing. Apparently the Congolese National Army have been on their case seriously. But seeing that they are facing these losses, then Rwanda National Defense Forces decide to reinforce them in trying to divert the pressure from Chanzu, and therefore attacking the military position near Goma. And this is now where we have come to.
So that means things have escalated. I mean, one wonders what came first, the chicken or the egg. Rwanda is saying that it has ceased its operations flying into DRC. DRC is saying that they were banned. Either way, this is pretty serious to have the national airline of Rwanda not allowed or not flying into DRC. And
it is interesting, the DRC does not have really a well-functioning national carrier the way Rwanda Air was functioning. It's because they had flights from Goma to Lubumbashi, from Lubumbashi to Kinshasa, even a direct flight from Kigali to Kinshasa. So that is a major loss for Rwanda. And for the DRC government to take such a drastic step, that means what is happening on the ground is far more than what we know for the moment. And to me, I think this is what we have been talking about, that there is no M23. The M23 is just there, a rebel group outfit, but the underlying factors is the support coming from these neighboring countries, and the evidence now is emerging clearly and in the form of capturing soldiers, in the form of getting uniforms, in the form of getting a national ID card of those military officers who have fallen on the battle. And interestingly, even on the social media, there are videos of Rwandan soldiers taking back their fallen comrade back to Rwanda. So we are used to this idea of denying, and they have a history to that. It comes from the RCD, first the AFDL, then the formation of the RCD when Kabila chased them out of the DRC after the relation getting sour. They formed the RCD, then the RCD split from RCD Goma to RCD Kisangani. After that, CNDP was born. The CNDP now become the M23. The same old story with the same support from the same government across the region.
So what does this mean for relations between Kinshasa and Kigali? Is this something that can be fixed?
I think now the relations are reaching to a breaking point because the loss of trust clearly between the two countries. How they are going to work that, I don't know. I cannot foretell, because what I know for sure, there are calls from the DRC to take the fight to Rwanda. And interestingly enough, what is I'm really worried about is that both the Congolese people and the Rwandan people are of the same. Across Goma, the North Kivu, you have Rwandan people of Rwandan ancestry speaking Kinyarwanda. On the other side, the people themselves do not have a problem. The people of the DRC in East DRC are one and the same as those of Rwanda, but the ruling elite are the problem. The ruling elite trying to galvanize their support from external forces, trying to enrich themselves in terms of mineral resources, but also cementing their power and their clout in the region is the problem. And once that question is evolved between the ruling elite, the population will not suffer, because what is the problem here now? Those who are going to suffer are the local population. I'm imagining where there is a call that even the border should be closed between the two countries. You close the borders between Rwanda and the DRC, certainly it's the local population that are going to suffer. And to that extent, it's going also to have a regional implication. But I think if you want to look at the history of the region going back to the 1900s, you will find that what President Kagame is trying to do is going to the concept of ubugotanyi. In other words, the spirit of fight, the spirit of a mighty warrior that was coined by the King Bugeri
what's in it for
in the 19th
Kigali?
century.
If it's true that they are supporting substantially M23, what's in it for Kigali?
Two things. One is seeking hegemonic power in the region. The second is making sure the DRC remain a source of resources for Kigali, because quite frankly, you ask any economist in the region, Kigali cannot survive without the resources that are coming in Eastern DRC. And those they have been doing it since 1996 when they came along with Laurent Kabila. So if you cut those ties, the likelihood to affect the Rwandan economy is very high. Hence, Kigali cannot afford to have a someone who is going to impede those interests that they have in Eastern DRC. Unfortunately for the DRC is that throughout this history of fighting since 1996, there have been massive infiltration of the DRC institution by the Rwandan forces. And so you would remember that the war started as a claiming citizenship for the Banyamulenge, and therefore the subsequent mixage and brassage of the military has allowed Kigali to have its own people within the Congolese National Army. They talk about more than 145 military officers. Many are in economic sectors, many are even to the top of government of the DRC. So that's the problem that exists between the two countries.
Can Kigali step back? Is it possible that they might say this project, M23 project, must come to an end if in fact they are involved?
I don't think that they are willing for it to get involved, because for a peaceful Congo, that means an economic demise for Rwanda. And that is the challenge. That's where the problem lies. But then they always have to find a way of using the ethnic card to show up support from the outside because of the history of the Rwandan genocide. And that's the problem. Once takes out the ethnic card and look at the political issues and the economic issues that are within the context of the region, but also the different signing with the mining companies and other multinational organizations that Kigali have signed a contract with, under the guise that they have a better management of resources, they are getting resources from across the board, it's going to affect Rwanda. So Kigali cannot afford to actually cut ties with the DRC by whatever means, as you see the constant support for rebellion within the DRC, because that is the backbone of its economy. Otherwise, the Rwandan budget is supported by donor funds. Without that, we well know that is supported by donor funds.
Will we see conversations between the two heads of state? At the moment, there are diplomatic channels, no doubt, that are busy, but one gets a sense that to get over this, we're going to have to see these two heads of state sitting down.
For me, as a person who have been watching the region for quite some time, I would love where the two heads of states, both Kagame and Tshisekedi and Museveni, in fact, a matter of fact, they sit together. And this concept of Inkotanyi, the superior warrior that have within the Rwanda national psyche, especially with the military, and it's not just all Rwandan, it's, by the way, the clique under the RPF current ruling elite. Not all Rwandans are against the DRC, not Congolese are against the Rwandans. It's just this ruling elite. If they come together, discuss about just the regional development, discuss about the regional peace, not, going to the force of arms as a means to achieve whatever they wish to achieve, I think that we will see a more different turn of event happening in the region, because that region was prosperous, and in any case, during the CPGL, we call the Communauté des Pays de Grand Lac, which was then Burundi, Rwanda, and the Zaire at the time. We've never seen such wars happening often, but both presidents, Habyarimana, Pierre Buyoya in Burundi, and Mobutu in Zaire at the time, they were cooperating.
Did President Tshisekedi have no choice but to take the action that he did? I would imagine that he's probably feeling enormous political pressure in trying to deal with the issues, particularly in the Eastern DRC.
Certainly he faced two major things. One, he's fighting for the election within the DRC. And that election have to be based on the current evaluation of his term, and one of which is the security in the East. You remember the East, close to both the region of Beni and these other provinces, did not vote. So how is he going to explain this in 2023 when the next elections happen in December? But also a general call from the Congolese civil society, including the people themselves, saying that now we can set our difference aside. We have one common enemy, in this case, who is the aggressor, is Rwanda. And that call, I think, is one of which that pushed him to take such a drastic measure. But it started a longer way when there was an attempted insurrection which led to the arrest of Francois Beya, who was seen as a Kigali's point man in Tshisekedi's government.
All right, Nixon, we can talk about this region for a long, long time. We've run out of time, but one suspects that the coming week is going to be pretty crucial. And probably they need to do something sooner rather than later, because if the status quo continues, it might be really hard to come back from this. Nixon, thank you so much. We'll chat again soon.
Thanks for having me.